There's a quiet fear creeping into our daily lives. Not the fear of failure, poverty, or heartbreak, but something more subtle and far more dangerous. The fear that we're wasting our lives and don't even realize it. You wake up in the morning, check your phone, rush through your routine, chase deadlines, make money, pay bills, and tell yourself, this is life. But deep down, there's a small voice whispering, is this really all there is? Carl Jung once warned, one day, you may wake up and realize you've missed half your life. Not because you weren't smart enough, not because you weren't trying hard enough, but because you were caught in a cycle, a life that looks busy on the surface, but underneath is painfully meaningless. You keep searching for something, more money, a better relationship, inner peace. But the harder you search, the more exhausted you feel. The more you run, the emptier it gets. You are not alone. We live in a world where feeling lost has become normal. There's medication for depression, but almost no one asks why your soul feels empty. You can gather thousands of likes, but still wonder if anyone truly sees you. You can have every comfort imaginable, and yet still feel like nothing in your life is really happening. Then you start to doubt yourself. Am I broken? Am I weak? Am I mentally ill? Or perhaps, as Jung once wrote, the problem is not in your brain. The problem is in the way you're living, and that way of living no longer fits your soul. This video won't promise to fix you in 10 minutes, but it may do something more important, wake you up. Because you weren't born to just exist. You were born to live, fully, meaningfully, and courageously. And if you're willing to face yourself, to look into the parts you've ignored, denied, or buried, then today might just be the day you stop surviving and start living. Part 1. The price of not waking up. You may wake up one day to find that you've missed half your life. Carl Jung didn't say this to frighten us. He said it because it's already happening, quietly, invisibly, all around us. So many of us live as if we have forever. We postpone joy. We delay our dreams. We silence that inner restlessness with distractions, endless scrolling, numbing routines, checking boxes we didn't even choose for ourselves. We convince ourselves, I'll figure it out someday. I'll start living after I get that promotion, after I lose the weight, after the kids grow up. But as Jung warned, someday may never come. And even if it does, will you still be alive on the inside when it does? This is the tragedy of modern life. We confuse movement with meaning. We stay busy to avoid the emptiness. And slowly, almost without noticing, we trade our potential for comfort, our soul for security, our life for a well-decorated cage. Ask yourself, are you truly living? Or are you just managing a highly efficient form of psychological avoidance? Are you guided by something real inside you? Or are you drifting through a life scripted by fear, expectation, and unconscious routine? Because if you don't wake up, if you don't stop and question the path you're on, there will come a moment, in a hospital room, in an empty house, in a sleepless night, when you realize the people-pleasing wasn't worth it, the constant proving was never necessary, and the things you thought would make you feel alive never did. Carl Jung believed that the real sickness of our time isn't depression or anxiety. It's spiritual sleepwalking. It's living as if your life doesn't matter, as if your soul is just some poetic idea, instead of the very center of your being. But here's the truth. Your soul is knocking, and the longer you ignore it, the more it withers. Until one day, it stops knocking altogether. So let me ask you now, not as a philosopher, not as a therapist, but as someone who's also walked through the numbness. Are you living? Or just delaying the life you were meant to live? Part 2. Common mistake. Blaming the brain. Nearly all these patients have been convinced that their sickness is of a physical nature. Carl Jung. It's one of the greatest misunderstandings of our time that anxiety and depression are simply mechanical problems. As if your soul were modern medicine loves to reduce suffering to biology. A chemical imbalance, a misfiring neuron, a broken brain. But Jung stood up and said, "No, you are not broken. You are lost." He believed that what we call mental illness is often a spiritual crisis in disguise, a cry from the soul, not a glitch in the hardware. Because think about it. What if your anxiety isn't just a disorder, but a signal, a flare from the deep, telling you something in your life is out of alignment? What if your depression isn't just a malfunction, but a mourning for the parts of you you've buried, silenced, or sacrificed? We live in a culture that teaches us to numb, to medicate the symptoms, to fix the surface, without ever asking what lies beneath it. But Carl Jung's insight was radical. The pain you're feeling may not mean you're ill, it may mean you're awakening. He didn't ignore suffering, he didn't romanticize it, but he saw it for what it often is, a compass pointing you back to meaning. So if you're overwhelmed, anxious, exhausted, don't rush to silence those signals. Don't immediately assume something is wrong with your brain. Ask first, is there something wrong with your way of life? Are you living in truth or just surviving in D? Because healing doesn't begin with a prescription. It begins with a question. What is your suffering trying to tell you? Part 3. The hard truth. Life is not supposed to be easy. Man needs difficulty. They are necessary for health. Carl Jung. It's not what we want to hear, but it might be what we need to hear most. We've been sold the illusion that a good life is a comfortable one. That if we just find the right routine, the right mindset, the right supplement, then peace will come and the chaos will stop. But Jung looked his patients in the eyes and said, "No, life is not meant to be easy. In fact, it's the very friction of living, the heartbreaks, the failures, the confusion, that forges us into something real. Just like the body needs resistance to grow muscle, the avoiding discomfort doesn't make you stronger, it makes you brittle. When you believe life should be smooth, every challenge feels like an injustice, every storm feels like a betrayal, and so you suffer more. Not because life is unfair, but because your expectations were." Jung saw that the healthiest individuals were not those who avoided hardship, but those who met it head-on, not with blind optimism, not with victimhood, but with a quiet, grounded strength that says, "This is hard, and I will grow anyway." Because your strength doesn't come from what you've been spared. It comes from what you've survived and transformed. So if you're struggling, don't ask, "Why me?" Ask instead, what part of me is being called to rise? This is the inner reframe Jung offered, that your challenges are not detours. They are initiations. And once you stop expecting life to be easy, you finally become strong enough to live it fully. Part 4. Don't dig into the past. Act in the present. We've been taught to search backward, to find the wound, name the trauma, uncover the origin story, as if understanding why we're broken will automatically make us whole. But Jung warned us, this obsession with the past, it's not healing, it's avoidance. disguised as introspection. Why? Because it's safer to analyze a scar than to confront the blade in our hand today. It's easier to relive childhood pain than to ask, what am I still avoiding? What truth am I afraid to live right now? Yes, your past shaped you, but your present is where transformity. You don't need to rewrite your history. You need to reclaim your power in this moment. Jung saw that many patients used the past like a hiding place. They pointed to childhood, to exes, to misfortunes, all to D. Because it is terrifying, isn't it? To take radical responsibility, to stand in front of your own shadow, the envy, the fear, the rage, and say, this is mine, and I choose to grow from it. That's not about blame. It's about become. Healing isn't found in perfectly constructed stories of trauma. It's found in the courage to stop telling those stories and start living a new one. So ask yourself, not what happened to me, but who am I willing to become despite what happened? Because the past may have written your pain, but only you can write your rebirth. And it starts here. Not in therapy rooms alone, not in dusty journals, but in your present choice to face the darkness you've been avoiding and walk forward, not as a victim, but as the author of your own becoming. Part 5. The shadow is not just darkness. We think of the shadow as the monster under the bed, something shameful, dangerous, unworthy. Something to suppress, control, or exile from the light. But Jung saw it differently. He knew that the shadow isn't just where you hide your flaws. It's also where you've buried your fire. That anger, you were told, was too much. That sensuality you learned to mute. That wild ambition, that blunt honesty, that gut instinct you were shamed for. You didn't lose them. You exiled them. Not because you're weak, but because the world taught you to survive by dimming your light. The tragedy is that you believed it. So now you walk around half alive, polished, presentable, agreeable, but disconnected from the very instincts that once made you powerful. Jung reminds us, the shadow is not the enemy. It's the unlived life within you. It holds the parts of you that could make you bold, whole, real, if only you had the courage to reclaim them. You want confidence? Go to the part of you that was shamed for speaking up. You want freedom? Face the part of you that's terrified of being seen. Because the key to your rebirth isn't in becoming someone new. It's in recovering what you've abandoned. This is why shadow work matters. Not to shame yourself more, but to integrate, to say, this too is me, and I will no longer reject it. Yes, your shadow contains your rage, your envy, your fear, but it also contains your fire, your truth, your raw magic. And if you want to stop wasting your life, go into the place you've been avoiding. Your power has been waiting there all along. Part 6. Why you truly feel empty. There is a particular kind of suffering that plagues modern life. Not war, not hunger, not tragedy, but emptiness. You feel it in the quiet moments, when the noise fades, when the notifications stop, when the mask slips just enough for you to hear the whisper, what am I even doing? You scroll, you work, you chase. Success, beauty, validation. But no matter what you collect, the hollowness persists. Carl Jung saw it long before social media, long before dopamine traps and hustle culture. He met a woman, constantly traveling, constantly seeking, her eyes wild with a hunger that had no name. She was possessed, he said, not by a demon, but by a life that made no sense. She wasn't lacking anything except meaning. That's the wound that festers under the surface of so many lives. Not a lack of things, but a lack of why. We mistake motion for purpose. We confuse attention with connection. We drown in abundance, yet starve for meaning. Jung's warning was simple but devastating. If your life doesn't make sense to you, if it doesn't feel connected to something larger, something sacred, then all your efforts, achievements, and busyness will feel empty. Because a human being cannot survive on goals alone. We need a reason to exist, something that anchors us beyond survival or performance. This isn't about religion, it's about soul. What makes you feel part of something greater? What makes you rise in the morning with quiet conviction, knowing that your life, no matter how small, matters? Until you find that, you'll keep searching, buying, traveling, performing, but never arriving. So ask yourself, are you seeking because you're curious or because you're lost? Because if you're lost, it may be time to stop running and start listening. Your emptiness isn't a curse. It's a signal, a sacred ache calling you to remember. You were not born to function. You were born to mean something. Part 7. Meaning. The greatest antidote. What if peace doesn't come from having less pain, but from having more purpose? Carl Jung understood something most of us forget. We don't need a perfect life to feel fulfilled. We just need a life that means something. Not in a grand, heroic sense. Not fame, not power, not perfection. But in the quiet, sacred way that reminds you, my existence matters. He once spoke of a tribal elder who believed his life's duty was to help the sun rise each morning. Not for himself, but for the world. It may sound poetic, but what if that's exactly what we've lost? Not ritual, not religion, but a role, a way to belong to something deeper than ourselves. In a world obsessed with self-optimization and individualism, Jung's idea feels almost radical, that healing isn't found in fixing ourselves, but in joining the drama of life with reverence. Maybe your role isn't to save the world. Maybe it's to raise a child with tenderness, to create something honest, to hold space for someone's pain, to speak truth where silence has ruled. Whatever it is, when your life is aligned with that sacred role, everything changes. Your anxiety starts to soften. Your depression begins to loosen its grip, not because the pain vanishes, but because now it means something. Even your suffering becomes part of the story, fuel for empathy, depth, connection. This is the divine drama Jung spoke of. And you? You're not a passive observer. You're a character in it. So don't waste your life chasing distractions. Don't wait for the perfect moment or the absence of fear. Ask instead, what sacred role is my soul longing to play? Because once you answer that, you'll no longer need to escape your life. You'll finally be able to live it. You were never meant to live numb, to wake each day haunted by a hunger you can't name, to scroll, to perform, to pretend you're okay when your soul is quietly starving. Carl Jung didn't offer quick fixes. He offered something far more radical, a path to becoming real. You don't need more affirmations. You don't need another productivity hack. What you need is to remember who you are beneath the noise. The emptiness you feel is not a flaw. It's a message, a sacred signal from the self, calling you home. Maybe you've spent years trying to outrun it through relationships, careers, distractions. But the truth is, you're not here to escape life. You're here to enter it fully. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are just being invited to awaken. And when you finally stop searching for something to numb the ache, you'll find something else rising, the quiet, powerful knowing that your life is meant for more. So ask yourself, what part of me have I silenced that now wants to speak? What dream have I buried that's ready to breathe again? What deeper truth am I finally ready to live? And if this video stirred something in you, if your heart whispered yes to even one line, I invite you to leave a comment below. I'm done sleepwalking. It's time to live awake. Because when one person dares to wake up, they give permission for others to do the same. Stay curious, stay brave, and stay with us. This is just the beginning. Subscribe for more Jungian soul work, and share this with someone who's ready to remember who they are.